to Janette's TV podcast. I'm your host, Janette Burke. Today I'm joined by Claire Ames, former food and travel writer who also has a number of books, including cookbooks, novels, and so on and so forth. We're here to talk about her latest book, which is called Victory Gazette, and that was released on June 7th. So welcome, Claire, to Janette's TV podcast.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
You too. Now, this book, Claire, it follows the story of a young woman named Justine Bertrand. Did I say that right? Okay.
Bertrand, yes.
Bertrand. And she is living in a small fictional town in Belgium. She is writing illegally for the resistance movement, countering Nazi propaganda. And she does a lot to risk her own life. So let's hear a little bit more about Justine's journey and how it intertwines with your understanding of World War II events and the role of women in those events.
Justine's journey was, it was by chance, actually. It starts with her family. She was raised by a family who had written newspapers in World War I. And so when World War II breaks out and again Belgium is occupied, she continues what her family had done. And she picks up the ball and she writes an illegal resistance newsletter. It was only one-page mimeographed, like most of them were. Wasn't an official newspaper. Those were all taken over by the occupiers, by the Nazi forces, for their own purposes to further their propaganda and their message. So Justine wants to tell the truth of what's really happening, and she risks her life to do so.
Mm-hmm.
Many young women.
Common of women in that time?
Pardon?
Was it common of women of that time to be so involved and to risk their life in the same way that
there were many women and young girls as young as 14 years old who were couriers, used their wiles to get information from the occupiers without them knowing that they were getting information. They obviously, there were people that came over from Britain that worked in underground, in a variety of capacities as spies. And there were some people who did that, some women who did that as well in Belgium. There were also young boys or boys who passed off, young men who could be perceived as being under the age of 14, who also did that kind of work. But girls were easy to, they could hide things. People didn't suspect them of working for the resistance.
Mm-hmm. And so you came to write this book. You have also written for historical pieces in the past. You were also doing articles. What made you drawn to this piece, and what did you want to bring forth as a message? Although it exists in the time of World War II, is there any remnants of the message and the story that you feel is appropriate or taking forth, or that we could learn from in today's political and economic environment?
When I was about 17, I went with my dad to Belgium. He worked in Belgium at the time. And I went to a place called Fort Bringdonk, which was the prison camp for mainly for political prisoners, a lot of journalists. It was mostly men that were kept there. Later on, there were some barracks built for Jewish travelers being sent further east to the camps. It was a brutal prison. It was known as a brutal prison. And it's one of the few where the commandant of that prison was executed after the Nuremberg trials. That's how brutal this place was. And so anybody, male or female, knew that they had the threat of possibly going to that prison or going to another one equally bad. It's something that stuck with me because the way the Belgian government set up this prison as a museum was to allow you to go through it as if you were the prisoner on trial. And I never forgot that. And I went back several times after that. And the story actually, Victory Gazette, opens in that prison. And the prisoner's story is woven throughout the novel. So that's where it came from. I also met a couple of people in small Belgian villages who were involved in the resistance. And I got to know them pretty well. And they were an inspiration. I think now, when sometimes we hear misinformation from the media, things that are not verified as facts, I question why we're not paying more attention to truth and facts. And I think if that's one thing that I wanted to get through, is that we have to be responsible for what we read and what we learn and what we hear. We have to do due diligence as the reader, or the person watching a video or TV.
And we have to decipher. And I don't think we take enough time to really do that today because we're busy and we turn the news on and we just watch and accept. But there is definitely a danger in that. And so how do you feel Justine's life mimicked the life of women back then, and what sacrifices they had to make?
During the war, they had incredible sacrifices. Think about it, a young woman, she's got one pair of oatmeal colored wool stockings, and that's it, that she has to mend. They're putting cardboard in their shoes because they can't get soles. They are becoming very creative, making carrot cake because there are plenty of carrots for Christmas dinner. They're growing vegetables. They can't get bread. Food is in very limited supply, and yet they have to still work, feed their families, do what they need to do, take care of everything with almost no resources. Probably very similar to situations in the world today where there are wars and skirmishes.
Correct. And so what do you want the reader to take away from the book when they read it and we'll talk about how you can go to get the book and where you can go to get the book. I'll give you that in a minute. But what is the main?
I want them to read the story and enjoy it and learn something and say, wow, I didn't know that. I've gotten a lot of comments from people that they didn't realize this kind of clandestine journalism was going on. They didn't realize about the prison camp, that particular prison camp. They didn't even know it existed. And I think if we can remember history, we can not repeat it. And, in many ways, it's a multifaceted story. And It's a story of courage and resilience in a time of hardship and a time of fear. And I hope people can find that in themselves.
All right, let's turn to Justine's betrayer. And why did you include that part? Why was it important for her to have a betrayer in the story? What was the significance of the betrayer?
Of being betrayed.
Mhm.
People were betrayed all the time.
And
It's not something that was unusual at the time. They would be tortured brutally sometimes, and they were betrayed by friends, they were betrayed by family members, or by strangers. And it's an aspect of the time that I felt needed to be focused on. And why did that happen? How much can one person take when they're being tortured? It's a very, very difficult situation. And she knew she'd been betrayed, but she didn't know who. She
But
only
she
had
returned
suspicions.
25 years later to discover who it was. She faced the person.
You know, I thought about that 25 years, but you have to look at the times. 25 years in 1960s to fly to Europe was extremely expensive from the United States. Very few people could afford it in the 1960s. And most working women didn't have the time off from work to go into that kind of thing. In those years, a lot of people who had a job or had a business had a week's vacation a year in the United States. And that's where she found herself living. So it's not unusual that it would take her a long time to save money to go.
But did she go for the sole purpose to confront the betrayer?
No, she went because she was reading um, a newspaper on a Sunday morning in New York and saw that her town where she had lived was featured. And she recognized names and she recognized the house and which had become now a bed and breakfast. And she decides on the spur of the moment, like many decisions are made, that she wants to go. It's time for her. She had made her peace and it was okay. When she had that outside spark of learning about the town in an article, she decided to go and called Sabina Airlines, which was how you could get to Belgium at the time.
And so in confronting her betrayer, because I'm not gonna, we don't want to give too much of the story away, but was confronting the betrayer
She didn't set out to
a relief?
confront the betrayer.
No, but when she did, and when she discovered who it was it a relief for her?
Was it a what?
A relief for her to know.
It was a recognition.
Okay.
That's more of what it was. It was someone who was close to her and someone she knew well. And so she didn't go with the intent to see this person and to confront him. He actually confessed.
Okay, so out of the entire story, without giving too much away, how do you feel this story impacts women? Well, first Justine, but all women too. And particularly because women have always had a very high impact and influence on world events and changing world events for the better, particularly of their children.
I'm not sure I understand what you are asking me.
What I want to know is, how do you feel Justine's the story of Justine, the story of the book, could help other women continue to impact world events and make changes for the better, like they've always done. Like, like the suffragette movement was against war for their children, and feminist movement, so on and so forth.
I'm not sure that this story is about her impact on world events. It's more about her impact on her community. And because she's not writing the newspaper for the world, she's writing the newspaper for the people, and putting in recipes and putting in suggestions and telling the truth and giving strategies for survival to her fellow villagers and people in the surrounding area. So I think, if anything, it's a call to for grassroots.
Mm-hmm. But that's where it starts, right? It starts
It always starts in grassroots.
Starts community, and then it grows, right? So
Yeah.
I guess that's it. Did answer my question, and it's to my point that she's instrumental in shaping people's perceptions, values, opinions, possibly also learn from her own home and her family, and making a difference. And she's not unlike many other women who came before her.
No, and who have followed her. There are many women who have stood up for things they believe in. I mean, there are hundreds of them. There's so many of them that, I can't even name them all without taking up, 10 hours or something. But there are many, many women historically, and a lot of them are unknown. A lot.
And
Notoriety doesn't mean that, or not being famous doesn't mean that it's a person is not of value. Nobody knew who Justine was. She was just a regular person. She was a barmaid who happened to do all these
it
other
really
things.
speaks to her courage and her strength, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so how do you think she was able to develop that courage and strength?
How does anyone develop it? I think a lot of it has to do with how you're raised, how aware you are. If you keep educating yourself and involving yourself in your world and expanding your knowledge of your world to a larger arena, that's how you find it. You find it in your spirituality, through your family, through friends, people who's, seeking out people who support you.
Mm-hmm. Very important.
No matter who they are. There is one person in the book that she befriends who is on the opposite side, but they have a supportive relationship. So we can find what we need to help us in a lot of different places and from a lot of different people, and sometimes from people we don't suspect would help us.
Correct. Or we can have different opinions, but still respect one another.
Yeah.
And work together. Well, that's a good point, I think. So let's now give you the shameless promotion, talk about where we can go to get the book. And if you have the book with you, like to show the cover, we could do that as well.
Let me just check here if it's going to come up. A paperback version of the book is coming out in September, in a couple of weeks.
Okay,
right now, I'm just trying to get this open on my device. There it is. There it is. Can you see it?
Yes, so that's the paper book version cover. And where can
And
one
it's also the ebook cover, which is available on Amazon.
Okay, so Amazon, we'll put the link in for everyone to go get the
Yeah.
book, and we'll
Thank
also
you.
show the cover of the book when we write everything up. So is there anything you want to say that we didn't touch upon before we close out?
I think you've touched upon just about everything, um, which is fabulous. It's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being with us. And thank you, my dear audience, for joining us today. Please remember to like, comment, and share all our posts with your family and friends. You will find us everywhere on the TV side, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Vimeo, Rumble, Pinterest, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, the list goes on. On the audio MP3 side, you will find us on Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and that list goes on. For a complete list of where to watch and listen to us, please check the links in the show notes below. And remember that you can support us in one of two ways, either with the purchase of a JTV t-shirt or sweatshirt with your favorite saying or a logo and the tagline of the JTV show. All you have to do is choose your size, your color, what you want, and all orders are conveniently shipped straight to your front door. There's more on how to order in the links below. And we also have a Patreon account if you'd love to support us, as we continue to bring you the best content we can for women, savvy women over 40. And that Patreon link is below. No donation is too big or too small. And I think that covers it. So, and until next time, continue to be fabulous. Subscribe to our channel and we'll see you then. Bye for now.